macOS 2026 Tahoe running on an unsupported iMac 2017 and an unsupported MacBook Pro 2016. Unfortunately, that's too good to be true. Welcome to Jesse's Flying. I know it's been a while, nearly 2 months since the last video, but there are some new videos coming soon, starting with this one. That is not a fake. This is macOS 26 Tahoe running on an unsupported iMac and MacBook Pro from 2016 and 2017. It's not Photoshop, it's working. But I am using a nightly build, an beta version, not a release version, of OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0.0 that is by far not ready yet for release. And on those two Macs, Wi-Fi is not working, audio is not working, the graphic acceleration is not working, so it's not a usable version of macOS 26 Tahoe. So I'd like to take you on a journey. Let's find out what happens behind the scenes of OpenCore and OpenCore Legacy Patcher, if anything happens at all, and how are the odds to get the release version of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0.0 for macOS 26 Tahoe, maybe soon, maybe later, maybe at all. And let me show you the background of that OpenCore Legacy Patcher. Let's start. But before we start, a word of warning. Make sure, if you are using an unsupported macOS on an old Mac, to switch off all automatic updates. Especially when you update macOS Sequoia, it always tries to turn on these automatic updates after every update again. So go to the settings, and even if there's that nice shiny red little one that you have an update, do not update to macOS Tahoe. As you could see, my two Macs, and I had two other where I couldn't even install it. My two Macs don't have any Wi-Fi, don't have any T1 Touch ID support, don't have audio, nothing. Switch off the automatic updates down here, where you can switch every single button off to make sure that it doesn't update automatically, and do that after every update you did. When you see that there's an update, for instance, like here on my Mac Pro for macOS Sequoia to version 0.7.2, wait a little bit until you hear on my channel or on any other channel, you hear a thumbs up that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher in the latest version 2.4.1 handles that new update for Sequoia or Sonoma or Ventura or whatever, or if there are any issues. I'm still testing every update, at least from Sequoia, on all my unsupported Macs, and I will give you a thumbs up if it's safe to update. And therefore, don't forget to subscribe my channel, click the bell for notifications so you don't miss that thumbs up. So let's talk about the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. That is the software, for those who don't know, that enabled old unsupported Macs to run the latest macOS version. And that worked fine up until the latest version of the last year's macOS Sequoia. And we want to check if there are any clues how far the developers are with the new version for macOS 26 Tahoe. Because the last years, whenever there was a new version of macOS, like Sequoia, Sonoma, Ventura, or whatever, at that day, there was a new OpenCore Legacy Patcher version released to enable all the old Macs to install that new macOS. But that didn't happen this time. When macOS Tahoe was released, there was nothing for the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. And that is the GitHub page, and you find all the links down in the video description that of the web pages that I show you right now. So if you have a look here at the releases page, and that is where you find the official releases, The last one is from September 1st, and that is just a bug fix release. So it showed some wrong installers when downloading it. They didn't change anything to the core of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. The release they are talking about is the release 2.4.0, and that is from May 12th. That is a pure release for macOS, as it states up here, macOS 15.5, so that is Sequoia. And we'd like to dive in the background of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. It's all open source, so if we go on the main page, we should see some work on the new version because it's open source and it's on GitHub. And how to find that? It's quite easy. Let's first check what they are doing to this main branch, what it's called the main version. There are many commits, and you can see the last one is from November 18th. That is Paradox 1994 working on it. And if you go down here, there are a lot of updates that is Paradox doing, and that goes all the way back. Unfortunately, Paradox is the guy who maintains all the documentation, nice, neat and shiny and up to date. So all he does is updating README files or explaining something in the MD files, like here. These are the files that show up in the OpenCore Legacy Patcher, or adding images and so on. So he's not a developer for the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. He's for all the documentation, which is quite important, but that's no progress towards Tahoe. So let's switch the branches, because when you switch here from main to macOS-next, that is their synonym for macOS 26 Tahoe, you see that there has been some work in this branch. And we go back to where the last version 2.4.0 was released, and that is May 12th. And there you can see also that Khronokernel, Mikola Grimalyuk, one of the main developers of OpenCore Legacy Patcher, made his last commit to that project. That was 2.4.0, and after that you can see May 18th there's some new MacBook Pro identifier. Then they changed a little bit formatting, and then on June 30th they updated the changelog and they added macOS 26 constants and USB mappings for macOS 26. And so they started the work. So Jasny actually was it that committed all the work. He just continued to develop OpenCore Legacy Patcher towards Tahoe. And when we click the changelog, you can see 2.4.0 was the last official release, and they are working on 3.0.0. Restore support for File Vault 2 on macOS 26 because they changed a little bit with the File Vault. That's the encryption of the hard disk. And they add USB mappings for macOS 26. So the USB ports and the USB devices work again with macOS 26. But that was it for that commit. Let's go back one step, and then you can see they added the Max kernel for the USB map to enable that, add modern audio patch set foundation, but that is just the beginning to get audio back. As you saw in the intro, my MacBook Pro and my iMac don't have any audio yet. Apple HDA, that is the audio driver from Apple. They added a Tahoe icon, they fixed SDK patches and so on. But unfortunately, as you can see, the last commit is from July 21st. And since then, it's August, September, October, November. It's been 4 months where nothing happened on the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. the macOS-next branch. So the development, at least on GitHub, is stuck since July 21st. And that is the version that I downloaded, and I had to tweak a little bit, but then I was able to install macOS Tahoe on those two unsupported Macs. And let's go some other route. Okay, we go to the releases again. And as you can see here with the 241 changelog, that was just a bug fix, but the 240 changelog, there you see that the PatcherSupportPkg 1.9.5 was used. But remember, 2.4.0 was from May 12th. And if you go to the D'Artagnan GitHub repository of the PatcherSupportPkg, there it is, May 11th, so 1 day before the release of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher 1.9.5. They added the USB webcam patch that was an issue with the Mac Pro cheese grater, the Mac Pro 5 one from 2008 to 12, where you could connect the USB webcam, but there was no picture. There are some videos about that on my channel here, but they fixed that. So that is the only own file or own package that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher uses. Also May 11th. But if you go a little bit further down, and we will skip 232, that's a bug fix release, and the 231 is also a bug fix release, but then we go to 2.3.0 and we go into the changelog. And there you can see all the binaries that the OpenCore Legacy Patcher uses. And these are external binaries from the OpenCore team. And so OpenCore is the bootloader that also enables Hackintoshes and whatever. And the OpenCore Legacy Patcher is also using them. And as you can see here, OpenCore package, that is the only package that is their own package. We just saw it 1.0.5. But there is Lilu 1.7.0, whatever green, airport, Broadcom fix-up, NVMe fix, and so on. And these are all from Acidanthera. And Acidanthera is the group that develops OpenCore. And there are all the repositories here. And as you can see here, there is Lilu, okay? There's one new version. Remember, we had Lilu 1.7.0 from March 31st. That was used in the last OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and as in the newer versions, there are no incremented binaries. So 2.4.1, the latest one, still uses that. And as you can see, Lilu, there is one new version, that is 1.7.0, that is from last year. There's one new version, 1.7.1, from July 7th. And remember that date, because they added that new version, allow loading on macOS 26 without a special command. Okay, July 7th from Vandroy 2013. That's Serhii Prokorenko, another developer of OpenCore. And as you can see, that was Lilu. Let's talk about whatever green, Airport, Broadcom fix-up, and all the others that are here. I have them here. This is Lilu. This is whatever green. This is Airport, Broadcom fix-up. This is NVMe fix. This is restrict events. This is feature unlock, debug enhancer, CPU friend, Broadcom patch, and Cryptex fix-up. And as you saw, all of them have their latest update from July 7th. They just incremented the version number and wrote added constants for macOS 26 support. That's all. All these libraries, all these binaries are obviously not worked on because they all have the latest version, July 7th, just with some constants for macOS 26 support. So now you could say, okay, maybe they just work in macOS Tahoe. Let's check this. That is the issue that Dinak G, he is the other main developer of OpenCore Legacy Patcher besides Khronokernel, besides Grimalio. He opened that on June 30th as the WWDC has passed, and yes, Apple has officially declared macOS Tahoe as the last Intel macOS. And what issues do they see? Drop models, obviously. Let's go down here. They dropped the iMac 2019, the iMac Pro 2017, the MacBook Air 2020, the Mac Mini 2018, and the MacBook Pros 2019 and 2020 with 2 Thunderbolt ports. But that's the next main important chapter, the T2 challenge. All these models Apple dropped for Tahoe are equipped with a T2 chip, and with macOS Sequoia last year, the developers of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher had a problem with the MacBook Air 8 because these were the first models that had a T2 security chip that were dropped with Sequoia already. And since then up until now, you cannot make macOS Sequoia run on these T2 Macs. So if they having trouble, as you can see here, they have panic issues when booting through OpenCore package. That is the file I just showed you, the own file that has all the support stuff for the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. They made some progress since 1 year. That is 1 year after Sequoia was released, but panics are still occurring and there's still a significant amount of development work to do before T2 machines may even get to the install screen. And as all new models that were dropped for Tahoe are also T2 models, the developers first have to figure out what is the issue with the T2 models, and then you might be able to install Sequoia on these MacBook Air 8.1 and 8.2, and then maybe all the other drop models also for Tahoe. So that might be one of the biggest things they have to tackle before releasing version 3.0.0. As we already talked about, that with Beta 2 and obviously in the release version, Apple has removed Apple HDA.cax. That is analog audio support, for instance, for the iMac 19. That is one of the reasons why my 2 unsupported Macs don't show any audio. They got rid of Fusion drives. And my iMac 2017 you just saw had the problem when I installed, or I wanted to install Tahoe, that it shows me 2 drives, a small NVMe and a big spinning hard drive, because Fusion drive is not supported anymore. So I just installed it onto the spinning hard drive because I think it's a 32 gigabyte whatever NVMe in there. There's no use installing an OS on that. So either you swap that against the bigger one, or you can just use your spinning hard drive, or you just swap the spinning against an SSD or whatever. And they don't know if they can restore Fusion drive capabilities. File Vault, obviously, that already works a little bit, because as we saw here, let me go back to the OpenCore Legacy Patcher and into the macOS-next branch. And the commits, as you could see, there was added APFS aligned EFI driver that is to enable File Vault again. As far as I know, that works, but we don't know exactly. And graphic support, Apple has introduced yet another graphic redesign, Liquid Glass. They made already some progress that is the reason why I had a wallpaper and everything with Tahoe, and the screensaver, for instance, on my iMac also works. But the liquid glass, if you have an old unsupported graphic card in your Mac, the liquid glass won't work, and so the downgrades involved will not allow for liquid glass to be supported. What they also need patching, as you can see, wireless, T1 chip, and USB. USB, they added already some USB mappings. That looks good. And they increased the Mac's kernel, so they allowed the USB mapping driver to run on macOS 26. And as you can see, they already are working on Apple HDA, bringing the analog audio back. But there's still a lot of work to do. So these are the issues, and the timeline, they don't promise anything. A rough estimate, we hope for the upcoming winter with OpenCore Legacy Patcher 3.0. It's November, so there might be a reasonable amount of time, and there might be some reasonable chances that we get the first version. But as you can see, the additional drop T2 models are a significant challenge. So my thought process would be that they will release version 3.0.0 with all the other fixes maybe. So you have wireless back again, you have the T1 chip, because and that is why I have the MacBook Pro 2016. This is one of the only models, and only 2 models with the T1 security chip. And I cannot add any fingerprint. I cannot use the fingerprint to log in. I cannot even open the settings for the lock screen because it tries to communicate with the T1 chip and it doesn't work. The touch bar works, but many of the functionalities don't. So yeah, they might release a 3.0 version with wireless drivers, with a T1 chip, with USB drivers, as they have already in, because my USB ports work. Graphic support, but no liquid glass functionality or design for unsupported Macs. Firewall Vault works. Fusion Drive, maybe not, maybe, but that is only like a very few iMacs that have that. And then you just use your bigger hard drive and audio support. But then they would only allow models that already run Sequoia to upgrade to Tahoe. But they wouldn't be able to just enable the now dropped models or the MacBook Air models from last year to run Tahoe until they get the T2 stuff fixed. And unfortunately, there's one other bad news. Mykola Grimalyuk, one of the main developers of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher, he wrote in his blog from June 20th a little retro perspective how he came up. He and Dinak G, they're good friends, and they started in 2020. How they came up with the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. I give you the link down in the description so you can read it. And at the end, finally some bittersweet news that he said he'll be joining Apple's bug bounty team in Seattle. So in July, he went from Canada to Seattle, and he is out of that project. And so it's up to Dinak G and his team to hopefully bring the version 3.0.0 to life. And let me just check the OpenCore Patcher Paradise. That is the official Discord server of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher. By the way, there is also a Discord server for Jesse's Flying, and the link is down in the video description. I would love you to join my community, because here on that channel there is quite less traffic, and there's nothing much going on. On my Discord channel, on my Discord server here, there's a lot of stuff going on, and you have a channel for Tahoe, photos, iMac, MacBook, Mac Mini, Mac Pro, gaming, and so on. And if you, for instance, have a Mac Mini and you have some issues, just scroll through here, just ask your question and you will be helped. And by the way, let me check live while I record that video. Let us go to the members, and we are missing just 7 members to hit the 4,000 members on that server. So I would all love to see you there on the server and join our community, help each other, and get a lot of questions answered about macOS, Sequoia, or older on your unsupported Mac. Other than that, I hope I could just shed a little light into the development of the OpenCore legacy patcher and when or if we can expect the version 3.0.0. And stay tuned for my next video, because if your old unsupported Mac already updated to Tahoe automatically, I might have found a way, if there is some important data on that, how you could maybe boot into Tahoe, log in and get the data on an external drive or whatever, and then save the data before you have to reinstall an older macOS. There are a lot of people asking me in the comments or on the Discord server, no, you cannot downgrade. If you have a certain iOS or macOS version, there's no way of downgrading it. The only way is to erase the hard disk on Macs and to install an older version of macOS, either if you have a USB thumb drive with an older version, an OpenCore legacy patcher, or do the official Apple recovery with Command R. And here in that video, I show you some more commands. You can either get the latest, the earliest, or the actual macOS version on your Mac, and then you can go from there, install OpenCore again, and update to whatever macOS, unsupported macOS version you want. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for that rescue video that will be released soon. I just have to test some final things, and hopefully there are many more videos in the near future here on my channel to come. Thank you so much. Join my Discord community. See you soon. Bye bye.